Anton stopped at the center of the valley floor, his boots crunching against loose gravel. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and dry earth. He looked up, expecting the jagged silhouette of a peak, but the horizon shifted. The rock face groaned. Layers of shale and granite slid away, exposing a surface that was not stone, but a colossal, blinking eye. Anton stumbled, his heels digging into the dirt as he scrambled backward. The ground beneath him buckled. A sound erupted from the depths of the earth, a deep, grinding vibration that rattled his teeth and forced him to his knees. It was not a landslide. It was a voice. The entire valley trembled, the resonance pressing against his chest. "Anton, you have returned," the mountain boomed, the words echoing like shifting tectonic plates. He scrambled up, palms flat against the vibrating dirt, his voice cracking as he shouted back, "I have never been here before." The mountain did not pause. It only watched, the massive eyelids sweeping open to reveal depths of ancient, unblinking light. The mountain's voice continued to vibrate through the soles of his boots. High above the valley floor, the peak began to exhale. A thick, swirling mist poured from the summit, but it quickly coalesced into thousands of glowing, golden symbols. They drifted downward like burning embers caught in a slow-motion storm. Anton watched them descend, the light casting long, frantic shadows against the cliff face. As the first symbols neared him, he reached out instinctively. His fingers closed around a glowing sigil, and a sharp, white-hot sting snapped his hand back. He hissed, clutching his palm as a faint scent of singed skin rose into the air. The symbols swirled faster, circling him in a tightening. "Golden spiral. What is this?" he cried out, his voice thin against the mountain's roar. "These are your decisions," the massive voice responded, the words rolling over him like a physical tide. "Small choices are seeds, and big choices are forests." Anton backed away, but the embers followed, sticking to the air around him, their collective heat turning the cool valley atmosphere into a furnace. He wiped his burned palm against his leg, staring at the swirling light that refused to fade. The cliff face began to fracture. A series of deep, rhythmic cracks spiderwebbed across the stone, radiating from the center of the mountain. With a sound like grinding boulders, the rock wall peeled back, revealing a cavernous, pitch-black throat. Anton retreated, his boots slipping on the shifting gravel, but the mountain did not wait for his compliance. A low, pulsing light flickered from within, spilling out onto the valley floor. He walked toward the opening, his pace slowing as the air temperature plummeted. Inside, the space was vast, stretching into a horizon of shadows. Rows of figures stood in precise, silent lines. Anton moved deeper, his footsteps echoing against the obsidian floor. He reached the first row and stopped. The figure was standing perfectly still, gripping a heavy leather-bound book with both hands. He moved to the next. A man sat in a chair, eyes fixed on an unseen point. Further down, another stood with a clenched, white-knuckled fist. He moved from one to the next, the silence of the hall pressing against his ears. He reached out to touch the shoulder of the nearest figure. The skin felt cold, solid, and undeniably real. He stepped back, his breathing ragged, as the realization solidified in the freezing air. Anton moved to the third figure. He squinted in the dim light, tracing the line of the jaw, the curve of the eyebrow, the specific scar above the left temple. His own face stared back at him. He stumbled to the fourth figure, then the fifth. Every statue, every silent occupant of the hall, bore his exact likeness. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of a pedestal, his fingers white against the stone, but his legs failed him. He dropped to his knees, the impact jarring through his joints. The cold floor seeped into his skin, but he did not move to stand.
"I thought I had more time," he whispered, the sound dying instantly in the vast, hollow chamber.
The mountain's voice rumbled from the very walls, vibrating the floor beneath his palms. Time is an illusion. Choices are the only reality. Anton pressed his forehead against the stone, his breath hitching in short, jagged bursts. He looked up at the endless rows of his own history, frozen in stone. Every version of himself captured in a single moment of decision. The hull seemed to contract, the shadows tightening around him as he stared at the evidence of his own scattered potential. The ceiling of the cavern groaned, the stone shifting and folding away like paper. Above, the sky opened into a void filled with golden light. A colossal engine descended, its massive iron gears grinding against the atmosphere. It pulsed with a rhythmic, blinding glow that washed over the hall. Anton stood, his eyes fixed on the rotating machinery. The machine dropped lower, its metallic teeth spinning with a sound like wind rushing through a canyon.
He reached up, his fingers trembling, and pressed his palm against a smooth,
spinning gear. The contact triggered an immediate shock. He saw flashes of his past, a hand closing a door, a foot stepping onto a different path, a word spoken in an empty room. Each memory sent a vibration through the gear that traveled straight up his arm and into his chest. The air grew heavy with the weight of these ripples. He watched as the machine translated his smallest movements into waves of light that radiated outward, coloring the horizon. The mountain rumbled, its voice low and steady.
"Every small action ripples through the universe." Anton pulled his hand back, gasping as the machine continued its eternal,
spinning work, bridging the gap between his history and the vast, humming expanse of the sky. The hum of the celestial engine reached a fever pitch, vibrating through the soles of Anton's feet. He turned to look at the mountain, but the stone beneath him began to protest. A deep, tectonic groan ripped through the valley floor. Cracks raced across the surface like spiderwebs. Anton scrambled backward, his heels catching on the jagged edges of the opening earth. The ground heaved upward, a violent eruption of dust and pulverized rock. From the widening fissure, a thick, dark vapor bled out.
It did not drift, it surged, coiling into the air with a predatory intent. The cloud darkened,
thickening until it solidified into a silhouette of impossible density. It stood before Anton, a perfect mirror of his own stature and reach. As Anton shifted his weight to the right, the shadow mirrored him instantly. When he raised his hand to shield his eyes from the rising grit, the shadow did the same.
Its movements precise and fluid. The air in the cavern grew frigid. The shadow stood motionless now, its presence filling the space where the light of the engine failed to reach.
Anton felt the weight of his own existence staring back at him, compressed into a singular, dark form that refused to look away.
The shadow stepped forward, its voice a dry rasp that echoed off the stone walls. "You could have been more," it hissed, pointing a dark finger at Anton's chest. It recounted moments of hesitation,
missed opportunities, and the hollow silence of roads not taken. Every word felt like a physical weight.
Pressing Anton back toward the edge of the fissure, he felt the cold radiating from the dark form.
A chill that seeped into his bones. The shadow loomed, its posture tightening as if ready to strike.
Anton stopped his retreat. He planted his heels firmly against the gravel and clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. He looked directly into the dark, featureless void where a face should have been.
"I cannot change the past," Anton shouted, his voice ringing clearly through the cavern.
"But I choose my path now." He stepped forward, refusing to flinch. The shadow recoiled,
its form flickering like a candle in a draught. It let out a soundless shriek, its limbs fracturing into jagged shards.
With a final, sharp crack, the entire silhouette collapsed, disintegrating into fine black dust that drifted harmlessly to the ground. The cavern fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting as the dust settled. The mountain groaned, a deep, resonant rumble that shook the remaining dust from the air. The fissure closed, leaving the cavern floor smooth and silent. Anton wiped the grit from his face, his breathing slowing as the tension drained from his shoulders. He turned away from the spot where the shadow had vanished. Ahead, a long corridor stretched into the gloom, lined with doors made of heavy, iron-bound oak.
Each handle was cold to the touch, biting into his palm. He walked past them,
hearing faint echoes behind the wood, the sound of a hammer on an anvil, the turning of pages, the laughter of people he had long forgotten. "These are the paths you left behind," the mountain rumbled, its voice now distant and hollow.
Anton stopped before the third door. He hesitated, his fingers hovering over the latch. He pushed.
The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing a sudden, blinding burst of sunlight. He stepped through, finding himself in a vibrant garden where green vines clung to stone trellises. There, in the center of the growth,
stood a version of himself, hands calloused and steady, holding a tool of his trade.
Anton watched his own reflection tend to the earth, finally understanding the weight of the life he had set aside.
Anton stepped back from the garden, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind him. He followed the winding tunnel until it opened into a vast circular room at the very heart of the mountain. The space was empty, devoid of shadows or echoes. In the exact center, perched upon a pedestal of raw granite, sat a single, dense stone. It looked heavy, jagged, and cold. Anton approached it slowly, his boots clicking against the smooth floor. He stopped and stared at the object, seeing his own reflection distorted in its rough surface.
"This is the future," the mountain whispered, the voice vibrating through the floorboards beneath his feet.
Anton did not hesitate. He reached out and wrapped both hands around the cold, unyielding rock. The moment his skin touched the surface, the stone began to hum. A deep, rhythmic vibration traveled up his arms, rattling his teeth. He pulled his shoulders back, bracing against the intensity.
"I choose to become better," Anton declared, his voice firm and echoing against the high ceiling. As he spoke, the stone fractured. A brilliant, blinding white light erupted from within, pouring through his fingers and flooding every corner of the chamber until the darkness was entirely consumed by the glow.
The brilliant light held for a heartbeat, then slowly receded, pulling back into the stone until the chamber returned to stillness. High above, the massive stone eye began to shudder. It moved with the sound of grinding rock, a slow, final blink that swallowed the last of the glow. The mountain shivered once, a deep tremor that settled into the earth, then went completely silent. Anton let go of the stone. His hands were steady. He turned and walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing against the cooling walls of the tunnel. The descent was long, but the path felt different beneath his boots. The oppressive weight of the mountain had vanished, replaced by the cool, thin air of the upper peaks. He moved with a rhythm he had not possessed before, each stride carrying him closer to the valley floor. When he finally stepped onto the gravel, he paused. He looked back at the peak, now just a jagged silhouette against the rising morning sun. The mountain remained motionless, its secrets locked away. Anton turned his gaze toward the horizon. The path ahead was wide and clear. He took a deep breath, shifted his weight, and began to walk, moving toward the vast, open distance with a steady, determined pace.